So then we talked about most dangerous assignment, of course, Fallujah, right? I mean, tell us about your experience there.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that whole 2004 period, was pretty dangerous. Actually, before that, I mean, the very close run thing would be Sadr City, also in 2004, because I remember being on a U.S. Army patrol, and we went to a police station, and it was, ended up getting surrounded. And then there were soldiers put on the roof, and then we had to exit the police station, and I saw there were bullets, kicking up the dust in front of my feet, and
Wow.
then we had this wild drive back because I guess the Mahdi army, the Shia militia had put up burning barricades in the roads. We were like doing U-turns, and I was in a Humvee, and there was RPGs going across. So that was pretty dangerous. But Fallujah in 2004, I mean, we were, it was the biggest, it was billed, and I think it was the biggest US military battle since Vietnam. The entire city was kind of empty. Mm-hmm. And, the night before, there was these just gunships just like blasting the place, and, it was pretty scary. I mean, we were all embedded journalists. We were at Camp Fallujah for a week or so before. And I remember being in the chow hall with all these Marines. So I was with a 1st Infantry Division. So it's Task Force 2-2. And I ended up actually being with the same platoon as David Bellavia, who was awarded the Medal of Honor. And yeah, I mean, in that chow hall, I remember listening to these like very young Marines, and, they were just waiting to go in, and they knew that, quite a few of them were going to die. And it was just like, and it was, and I remember a photographer taking a picture of the journalist, group photo. And then somebody said to him, "Are you just doing that because, when one of us gets killed, you can sell the photos to the newspaper?" And he was like, "Yeah, well, so."
Yeah, why not? We're all here to make a buck.
Right. So it was kind of dark. And, and I just, I remember, we were, as journalists, it's kind of interesting. We've just been talking about journalism, how trusted we were. And we were in on all the planning. Now, obviously, our lives were at stake as well. So it wasn't in our interest to start, kind of leaking stuff. But I remember the night before we went in, and, I was in this briefing room in Camp Fallujah, and I remember thinking, God damn, I wish I had my camera with me, because I just looked at the guys over them, pointing at the map, and, just how it looked like a scene from a movie.
Yeah.
And the 3 guys I was looking at were Captain Sean Sims, who was the company commander of the company that I ended up I went from one company to the other. So Captain Sean Sims, and there was his XO was Lieutenant Edward Iwan, I think, Iwan. Mm-hmm. And then the command sergeant major of the battalion was a guy called Steve Falkenberg. Mm-hmm. And I remember looking at those guys, and like, they just like from central casting, they just looked the part. It was super serious. Like, this was no kind of peacekeeping operation. This was no kind of walk in the park or training exercise. I'd never experienced something that just kind of felt so real. And those 3 guys were all killed, in the next few days.
Wow.
And it was just like, holy shit, I can't believe that I'm part of this. And, Command Sergeant Major Falkenberg was killed like on the breach. I think he just a bullet just hit him just below the helmet in the head, and dead. And I remember the word going around, like, have you heard, like, Command Sergeant Major's dead? And I remember a young soldier just saying, "Hey, I don't want to hear about that now." It's just like, yeah, I heard the rumor, but like, let's just focus. And then Iwan Iwan took, he was a young, he was a lieutenant, he was a great guy. He just single, he'd been touring around Australia, but, recent months before going to Iraq, and he was hit by an RPG, and they operated on him with the RPG still embedded, I think, in his stomach. And he died on the operating table. He had almost no chance, but just,
damn,
just terrible. And,
yeah.
I remember, Sean Sims, Captain Sims, he'd lost his XO, and and I remember him it's sort of unshaven, grimy sort of face, sweat streaked, and he'd been fighting for days, clearing houses, and he'd lost his XO, and I transferred from another company into his company, and he's like, yeah, welcome, this is good to have you on board. And I don't know, 30 minutes later, it came over the net, the CO's dead. And people were like, what are you talking about? And I remember there was a sergeant who was in the squad that I was with. So I think it was Bellavere was a staff sergeant, and then a guy called Colin Fitz. And I remember him just doing a talk to the rest of the squad. And he's like, listen, the CO's fucking dead, and he's dead because he went into a house, without clearing, that had been, without clearing it because he thought it had already been cleared. And, he's dead and we're alive and we're going to fucking stay alive. And I was like, again, it was like being on a movie set, and it was like, this was really real. You could see it in everybody's faces. And so that whole period, there were buildings rigged with IEDs. There were, kind of insurgents amped up, Bellavere went into a house with guys jumping out of wardrobes and guys you'd shoot that would just keep going. And just those whole few days, I just remember thinking I don't know, it just could be lights out at any moment here. And
Right.
So I feel that was the most, that was the most kind of dangerous assignment I had.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Fallujah and that early 2000s, I did the initial push into Iraq, and that was like true combat. I tell people, not a lot of SEAL teams or special operations guys get to witness or be a part of moving in and rolling in through a city. It's not typical of special operations. You're pushing through, you're sleeping in your vehicles, you're sleeping under them. It's before any bases were established. There was no forward operating bases. There was nothing. It's just you, your guys. We had Humvees with plastic doors, zero armor, and we filled them up with ammo, MREs, water, and fuel. There was barely any room to sit, and got on Highway 1 in Kuwait and drove north, on the highway. And that's, that was all Marine run all the way all the way up to Baghdad. But my point being is it's an unfortunate but amazing experience, right? Combat is unfortunate, but when you're a SEAL or any soldier, the pinnacle of your career is war. You don't go in to train for 20 years. You go in so that you can pull the trigger and hopefully do something for the greater good. And it's amazing when I talk to journalists who've been there, from y'all's point of view, especially yours. The first thing you did was you highlighted men, you highlighted who they are, and that now they're dead. And I think that's great. And I thank you for sharing that, because their families want their names to continue on forever as well.
Yeah.
So thanks for that.
Sure. No, it was just, I remember, we were mostly in Bradley's, and, sometimes we'd be there for hours, kind of in the dark, pissing in water bottles and stuff. And then just all the conversations,
I'm sure,
which were just great,
Yeah.
And they were just so funny.
Yeah.
And everybody's really tired, and people are kind of a little bit scared, and they're sort of hyped up as adrenaline, and let's face it, everybody knows that they might die that day.
Yeah.
And so which in a way is kind of like life affirming, but and then then the kind of the rear door would kind of like creak, and then all of a sudden the light, and then you'd like spill out. And it was just, it was an incredible experience.
You're listening to Can You Survive This podcast? Thanks for tuning in. Please make sure to subscribe, rate, and share on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your favorite shows.